Hello, and welcome to Cup of Java JavaFX Lesson 7. I'm Andrew, and today we'll be going over more menu applications and other JavaFX tricks. So the first thing we're going to start off with today are tables. Tables are an extremely useful data structure for Java and JavaFX in general because they allow you to work and extract data from Java objects. So typically, if you wanted to take an object and put it in a data structure, you'd have to make a custom function that would extract the data and take it out and display it in a nice way. However, with tables, they allow you to do that automatically. So to create a table, first you want to create a table view object. Each table view object will contain multiple table columns, which are the labeled things that contain your data. So each table column is initialized with the object that it takes in, as well as the data type of the parameter that it is looking for. For example, in the example on the right, we have our first column, which is first name, takes in a student object and takes in a string from the student object. We then use the setCellValueFactory and propertyValueFactory methods and objects which are added in JavaFX. You'll have to import them. And these are fancy ways of getting the properties from the object. So you'll see we reference the first name property. And what this will do is, as you'll see in a moment, it will go and check for a getFirstName method where the first in first name is capitalized because that's the naming convention in Java. And it will then use that method to scrape its data from the object. So you can see we do repeated stuff for the last name and also the grade. So you'll see that now we have our three students, Bob, Sarah, and Josh, all with their grades displayed. So if we go over to Eclipse, we can see the same thing here. And if we run it, then you'll see we have Bob, Sarah, and Josh. And so if we go to the student file, we see we have our variables, and then we also have our getters and setters. So by default, the propertyValueFactory will look for getFirstName, and you'll see that the first is capitalized. So if no matter what I do, you should make your variables lowercase so that it can look for the capitalized version in the get. And so you'll see we make our students, we make our columns, then we add the columns to the table view, then we add the students to the table view, and then we display it. So this is really useful if you have objects in your program and you want to display them in a nice way without having to make too many other methods to help make it look pretty. It will just do it for you and you can display it in a nice and concise way. Next, we're going to talk about another data structure, a tree view. A tree view is similar to a tree graph, if you've learned about that, where it organizes data in a top-down perspective, where kind of like the node tree in JavaFX, where each tree item has a parent node and potential children nodes and sprouts down, except this organizes it into a handy little menu type. So you see we start with a tree view, and tree views contain tree items. So we start by setting a root. In this case, this root would be foods. And the foods, at least in this example, has two subcategories, fruits and baked goods. And those have further sub-tree items, which have no children. So they are, I guess, leaf nodes. And these are the names of the different food items. So we can make this into more of a menu by adding click actions, as discussed in previous lessons. And it is also collapsible, although in my experience has been a bit finicky. If you don't want the root node to show, you can set the show of the root with a fairly simple method call if you want to make it a bit cleaner and not have it all wrapped under one thing. But otherwise, it will start condensed inside the root node as seen with the example. So we have the code here, and you can see when we run it, we have just foods here by itself closed. If we click the arrow, we have open up the fruits and baked goods, and we can further open and close these at will, and select each. And so that's where the menu ability comes in. You'll see we set the root, and then we make the two tree items and set them. It doesn't allow you to just put in a string. You have to put in a new tree item for leaf nodes. which is a bit cumbersome but not that bad. So we have two different tree items with children, and then we each set them to the root, and then we display it. So this is very useful if you want a hierarchical data structure and or menu system, and it's very compact and very nice. So now we're going to combine the previous two slides into something called a tree table view. Now, as the name implies, this combines aspects of both the tree view and the table view to make something that is both like a table in which you can extract data from classes, but also hierarchical like a tree. So the syntax is very similar to a tree view, except we add table to most of the names. So instead of a tree view, it's a tree table view. Instead of a tree column, it's a tree table column. And then we can add our tree items, which are not tree table items, thankfully, to each other and set a root and the same song and dance as a tree view. The table aspect comes in with setting the columns for the tree table view. So you can see upper there we have the same columns as the previous table, first name, last name, and grade. So now we can organize them into different classes. So we have a period, number, and then the number of the period. Now you'll see one limitation is that even the titles of the tree items must be the classes. So you can't do some easily hierarchical stuff. You can't just make the titles clean. You just have to make them in the same format as the rest of the classes. Although there is possibly creative workarounds. You can either do something like I did and just kind of go with it, or you can very easily make some conditional stuff inside the getters and setters of the class to make it more presentable. But as you can see here, we have organized each student into their separate classes. So we have our 12 students, we have our 4 classes, each with a new period. We put our students in the classes, and so we've already put our columns in, so the data works as you'd expect, and we hide the root. So you see we have the 4 periods, and they're all collapsed. So we can open up a period and see the different names as we want. So it's a very nice way to organize data and display it. So you'll see we can hide and show each different class. So if we wanted even more classes, we don't have to clog up the screen, and the UI is fairly intuitive. Next, we're going to talk about displaying images in JavaFx. So files in Java are always a bit tricky, but in JavaFx they tried to streamline it as much as possible. So to make an image, you use a file input such as a file input stream, and that can be put into an image view to just put directly into your program as a node. It can also be added to buttons and labels as just an extra parameter, and it supports GIFs, JPEGs, PNGs, and other formats. Not WebP, but not a lot of things do. So you can see here we have just a simple example of getting the Cup of Java YouTube profile displayed. We can also display media, which is video and audio, so MP3 and MP4, MOVs, stuff like that. And so we have a media player inside a media view. Media player addresses the things like the volume, the play rate, and all that, while the media view is more like a traditional node that you can scale and all that. So you'll see at the bottom, we set the media view to change the height, but we set the media player to change whether the video is playing or not. So you have to do this weird convoluted conversion thing of a media file, which thankfully, unlike the image, you can just put in the file name and directory and it works. And we do toURL, toURL, toString, don't know why, but it works. And then we can put that in a media player and put that player in a media view and put that into our program. So we can see as an example of combining these, we have our files here. So you can see they're in source HelloFX. So we need to put that into the directory. And then we have the word for word file name. And we just put that in a horizontal box. And this will be just some nostalgia.
And welcome to the Java Libraries course for Cup of Java.
The image here.
My name is Andrew,
video,
and Angelina and I will be taking you through this lesson, which is an introduction to JavaFX.
So even though it doesn't
the main Java library we will be using
once
for
I
this
stop talking and actually get on with it, there we go.
So
you can see that the video is in fact playing. And so you see we set the height because without setting the height, it will just go to its default resolution, which I don't know if you know what you're watching right now.
Hello,
but
And welcome to the
pretty
Java
big.
Libraries course.
So, yeah, you can change the media view to change all the node attributes, and change media player to change all the video and media specific attributes. Finally, we're going to be looking at WebView, which allows you to browse the internet from the comfort of your own JavaFx program. So we can make a web view pretty easily, and we can get the web engine, which is the actual browser that loads the CSS and HTML and JavaScript, and we can either load a link or load your own content. And so the content would be, let's say, a file, or I guess text, and the content type would be, let's say, HTML or JavaScript. So I guess it would be something /HTML, but it's not that useful, and this isn't an HTML course, so I'm not going to go over that. So you can see in this example, we load the JavaFX YouTube page, so we can pull up that code right now, and it takes a bit to load. It's not the fastest in the West, although it's pretty quick, especially considering other browsers. I was going to do the Cup of Java website itself, but this browser is so old that it is not supported anymore, so I cannot. So I just chose the Cup of Java YouTube instead. But as you can see, we can go and browse it just like that. So you can go back and find, of course, the best videos on here, and we can go
Hello,
and
my name is Andrew, and
get
welcome to
YouTube
Java
Premium,
Lesson 6.
and we can go back and watch the old videos in this new video on JavaFX, about JavaFX. Pretty cool, but again, it's pretty depreciated. There aren't too many, a lot of the newer stuff won't work with it, but for stuff that, like YouTube, which is meant to work with a bunch of different old browsers, you can do some fun stuff with it and make a custom browsing experience.